Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in our chats with Emily as we are calling our readings through the poems of Emily Dickinson. We turned out a poem 99 in the Johnson edition, New Feet Within My Garden Go. This is another poem about spring, another poem about rebirth or renaissance, but there's also a very interesting kind of text to this poem that suggests that maybe Emily's a little concerned about the future, and so we'll have to talk about that one as well. She's always trying to play the game of predicting the future and looking into the future, and I think there's some of that happening here. Now, our assumptions that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side again, Chats with Emily, our playlist. I'm hopeful that you've already been exposed to the intro set of comments in our introductory lecture, and that you've worked with our previous 98 lectures. We just finished with poem 98, One Dignity Delays for All. Now, I love the repetition of the word new in this poem, and we've said before that we learned from Emily the new is the new. The N-E-W is the K-N-E-W, that idea of cyclical. And this is a poem that validates that idea of the new is the new brilliantly. Let's enjoy it. New feet within my garden go, new fingers stir the sod. A troubadour upon the elm betrays the solitude. New children play upon the green, new weary sleep below. And still the pensive spring returns, and still the punctual snow. Now, there's a number of different ways to kind of approach a poem like this. One argument is to say, oh, well, Emily has maybe got a new gardener or somebody that's helping them. But I don't think that that's really what's going on here. I think Emily is playing around with the idea of what will it be like someday when I am no longer here and there's others here. And she begins then with new feet. New feet within my garden go. New fingers stir the sod. You'll remember sod from our study of poem 49. A troubadour will take us back to poem 96. You'll remember the last word of that poem, the troubadour bird. Upon the elm betrays the solitude. Now, the word betrays is a central word, I think, in this poem. In other words, there's this notion that life is what I know of it now, but then there's this recognition that sometime in the future, new feet are going to walk in my garden, new fingers are going to plant flowers in my garden, but the bird will continue to sing, right? In other words, everything will stay the same, or is it the same? Then notice the stanza break, and she's back to new again. New children play upon the green, new weary sleep below. Now, this is an amazing juxtaposition, and of course we're playing with Emily and her paradoxes again. By the way, my Emily who's doing such tremendous help with us for these lectures, pointed out that the elm tree is a symbol of both war as well as hope, which is fascinating in itself. The elm is the tree that's selected here. New children play upon the green, new weary sleep below. Well, that's a fascinating. New, weary, as in new, old, as in the new is the new, if you will. And then I told you guys, she loves this word still. You'll remember in poem 89, how still the riddle lies. And still the pensive spring returns, and still the punctual snow, exclamation point. Well, what is she doing in a set of lines like this with pensive and punctual? I think her point here is that life has always been about cycles, right? Cycles. It's always been about that. And there's always going to be somebody new who comes along after the old. This is just the way that it is. The children, and then of course the weary, the new weary who are buried. Remember that right beyond her garden was that cemetery, as we've commented in earlier lectures. At 2b, I love the repetition of new and still. I love the paradoxes of new and weary that she'll play with. Now, in terms of how we can relate this to other texts, you'll remember that in our study of Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman, what is it that Linda says to her husband? Life is a casting off, dear, as they're talking about whether, Hap's going to take over and Biff and Hap are going to be able to continue life and go on or whatever. The scholar David Priest, when he studied this poem, he came to an analysis of the great poet Horace and his Odes 4:7, where he concluded that springs return, but that human beings don't. And I think that's a fine insight to this poem, as well as, of course, Tennyson's Ulysses, this is my son, mine own Telemachus, to whom I'll leave the scepter and the isle. He works his work, I mine. This idea that as Odysseus gets older, he's got to turn it all over to the young Telemachus. Of course, Ode to the West Wind, Shelley's poem comes to mind. If winter come, can spring be far behind? That final line. Finally, at 3B, what are your thoughts about the idea of the new replacing the old? To what degree does that trouble you? To what degree are you excited for that? Thank you.